Bam Adebayo is a great defender. It does not matter against Nikola Jokic. The Nuggets get the win over the Heat. We'll talk about the new look of the second unit, including my thoughts on what Reggie Jackson will bring, how Thomas Bryant looked in his debut. Plus, Bones Highland's got some things to say. We'll talk about it. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us and joining us. Making us your first listen. We are available on all platforms. You can join the show on YouTube and join all sorts of folks hanging out with us in the chat section already. It's poppin'. Nemanja, Alexander, Carlos hanging out here. Mike hanging out with us. Lots of folks hanging out with us on Tuesday. Want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. On today's show, we will talk about the Denver Nuggets win over the Miami Heat, how they looked, how dominant Nikola Jokic was, how they got the win without two starters. A really impressive win versus a team that is on the upswing currently and always a tough team to play in Miami, especially in the midst of an East Coast road trip. We will talk about the new look Nuggets in terms of the second unit, how different that unit looks now, and how different it'll look with Reggie Jackson. You'll get my thoughts on that addition since I was out over the weekend. And in the third segment, Bones Highland, as young folks are wont to do, has some things that he wanted to say. We'll talk about if our impressions of it, those kind of thoughts, our reactions to those things in the final segment. Mostly mine, because I think Adam has already covered it in great detail. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. You can follow me on Twitter at HB Basketball. He's Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. And you can check out all his great work at DNVR. He's a little bit under the weather. So Adam, thanks so much for giving us a flu game today. I appreciate that.
A little flu game. Just a mild cold game.
A mild cold game. So let's start with a win. The Nuggets get the win over the Miami Heat. 112-108. Looked rough first stretch. I was like, oh boy, this is not looking good. Second unit made a real push in that first segment, in that first half, which I thought was impressive. And then the Nuggets starters really stabilized. My basic takeaways, Brendan Vogt had a really great article at DNVR talking about how Nikola Jokic does not see Bam Adebayo. It was really good.
True.
Like Bam is, I might say right now, like of anybody I enjoy watching.
You cut out there. What was that?
I said Bam Adebayo is my favorite defender in the NBA right now. He's not.
Really?
Yeah, he's the one that I enjoy watching the most. Again, I got to stress this. I understand why you're like, really? Because Nikola just absolutely kicks his ass for 4 quarters. I got to stress how good he is the rest of the time. He's really good. And it just doesn't matter.
Though, here's why I disagree with it, though, Matt. And this is like, as much as I want to pump up Jokic and all circumstances, I think Embiid does the same thing. And my thought is always like, Bam is not that big. I think he's like 6'9". It's my thing is always with these defenders, they're so good because they're so switchy. They can rim protect, but they can also switch and guard in space. It's like, yeah, but he's not a real center. He can't actually guard the centers. And it looks good against the league, which doesn't have any centers outside of just a few of them. And those few tend to really dominate him. So that's the only thing I'll put on that. That's the only reason why it kind of, I don't want to say annoys me, but that I roll my eyes on it is because it's the type that is good against the masses.
I get what you're saying. My answer would be this from Cooper Moorhead, who posted this last night. Bam Adebayo gave up 6 points to Jokic in the post last night, which somewhat incredibly is tied for the second most he's allowed in a game since his rookie year. Of the 9 times he's ever allowed 4+ post-up points, 6 of those are to Embiid and Jokic. You're not wrong in anything that you just said. The problem is you're like, he can't defend real centers. There's only 2 in the league.
Right.
Like there's only 2 in the, and you're absolutely right that like if you put Bam Adebayo back in 1997, it's barbecue chicken.
I disagree. I actually disagree with that, though. Even I mean, I don't know if it's even that. I'm just saying the league right now. It's like how Jokic gets the label of a bad defender, which I think is true, but because he can't guard the spread pick and roll, but he can do everything else. It's like we've created this very narrow definition of what basketball is, and then like grade people on the scale on that scale. Well, I just look at it and I go, he is good, but he is not good at guarding bigs. He just never has to.
Yeah, I think he's a really good help side defender. I think he's a really smart disruptor in help defense. I think that there's a lot of things he brings to the table. But regardless, it didn't matter at all last night.
He's a really good player. He's a really good player.
Nikola goes for 27, 12 of 14 from the field, didn't take a three. 12. His efficiency just is mind-boggling. 12 rebounds, 8 assists, no turnovers for Nikola Jokic, +5 in his time on the floor. Vlatko Cancar was I thought he was terrific. I thought Vlatko made a ton of really high leverage plays. Late second quarter, he had a pick and roll with Joker where he whips it to the corner for a Bruce Brown 3. That was very big. This wasn't a night where I thought like the Nuggets were firing on all cylinders. Michael Porter Jr. goes 6 of 15 from the field. Actually thought that he was a little disconnected on defense as well. Didn't love
really.
Yeah, I wasn't. He got
thrilled. The defensive player of the game chain, I believe.
I guess for me, it was like there was a stretch of the game that stood out to me again in the first half where I was just like, oh, he kind of like got bobbled. There was a couple of like, what do you do it? And they were talking about it on the broadcast too. I think he got much better in the second half. But not
after the game. I will say after the game, Malone lauded his defense. And one of the things that I thought was interesting and specifically pertinent to this last stretch of games is we keep talking about Michael Porter's athleticism coming back, and then look at he's dunking more, right? He didn't dunk for the whole first like 2 months of the season. He didn't dunk. He had, I think, 3 dunks. Now he's dunking more. But Michael Malone pointed out that his athleticism is really shining most on the defensive end, and just that he's able to move with guys and stay with guys right now and block shots and contest shots. So I was actually the other way. I'm impressed with Michael Porter's defense. I mean, it wasn't a great defensive performance from the Nuggets last night.
No,
I think largely because of the first 5 minutes, which is another story. This is the same starting lineup the Nuggets have gone to 2 games in a row now. And both games got off to a horrible start, right? 13-2 in Charlotte, and then a horrible start in Miami. And I don't know what to make of that because they were great the rest of the way. And if you actually look at that 5-man lineup on the season, it has a great net rating. But it's just interesting to me that they've gotten off to 2 horrible starts. I don't know what to make of it.
Chat's saying that Cancar got the chain, but I'm sure the mic.
Oh, he got it. I'm sure he got it because he made 2 huge defensive plays in the fourth quarter. Those were huge. I know it's weird to say because Denver was up 5 at the point, but that block 3 with about 3.5 minutes to go. Yeah, I think it changed the game. I think it's a sliding doors moment where if they make that 3, if they get it off and make it, that's a completely different close.
10-5-6 for Vlatko. KCP had 6 assists in this game. Bruce Brown shot well from the field, 6 of 12 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3. I thought his defense was really poor in this game. I thought Bruce really struggled and was bobbling stuff. I think he's getting the shortest end of the stick of this, like Murray being out right now, because he's playing point guard, and I don't think he's doing like great of a job. Yeah. And then like takes away from all the other good things that he does. Yeah, I kind of think he's not a point guard. You know,
I agree. Man, I'm going to come in a little hot for you. I'm just curious what you think because I love Bruce Brown. I think Bruce Brown is properly rated. Meaning, I think that like some team is going to give him. We're all worried that he's going to leave Denver in free agency, and I kind of still agree with it. I think some team's going to give him, but I think he's going to be the player where 3 or 4 teams are fighting over him, and whoever gets him is going to be a little disappointed when he doesn't really have a position. He's a little undersized, and he doesn't have one elite skill. He's got a bunch of very good skills, but there's not like, okay, well, we can put him here, we'll put him in the corner, or we'll put him on this guy. Like, he's a jack of all trades, and that's really useful. But I just think he's properly rated player.
He is the Big Lebowski rug that pulls the room together.
Yeah,
that's like really. I think he was always kind of described as like that connector role. That's like what he was described as. And the problem has been that without Jamal, and with Bones and the struggles that he had, there was a lot of times when Bruce has to be floor general, that doesn't work. When Bruce has to be shot creator, that doesn't work. Bruce helps the things that you do well work. Right. But if you don't have those basic things, it's not going to go well. So I thought that was there. We'll talk about the second unit and how different it looked, but I did think that it wasn't a good Ish Smith game. I really, Jeff had a really great cut for a dunk. I continue to believe that he is way more hurt than he's let on. The cast is off, but like when I see some of the turnovers that he has, where like for a lot of the criticism you could have lobbed at Jeff over the last 2 seasons wow, what a dumb pass, wasn't necessarily one of them. And some of this is just like the ball's getting out of his hand. And I cannot help but think that this is just the fact like he can't grip the ball. I think his hand is a lot more hurt than he is like, and he's just playing through it right now.
It's funny because his stats aren't bad. He was a +5, which is, what Jokic was last night.
Right.
So, I mean, he was a positive impact player. But I thought last night was another like really horrible game. I mean, there were just so many moments where I was like frustrated with him. I shouldn't say horrible game. He did some very positive things in important moments.
Yeah.
But there were just a lot of like.
I do want to say this though. There's like, why is he like last night? I was like, why is he playing Jeff Green so much?
There's
like,
no one else. There's no one else.
They're out. Like,
yeah.
There's no one else. Like, there's no Aaron and there's no Zeke. That's half of the forward rotation.
I mean, you could say play like who's the other guy? Jack White or something like that. But like you're stretching, I think. I mean, as at a different point in the season, maybe I could have said that, but like where they are right now, you just play the guys that you have and you trust and that you're with. But I like your take that one of two things is true. He's hurt and playing through it more than we realize, and it's affecting him, or he fell off a cliff. Because there's a lot of like right now where you're like, man, I feel like he was doing this stuff at a higher level last year.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the bench unit and how different it looks. You'll get my thoughts on Reggie Jackson, that addition. And we'll talk a little bit more about where that game is at. Later in the show, we'll talk about the All-Star selections, how the Nuggets have basically been shut out beyond Joker. And we'll talk a little bit about Bones Highland as well. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, I'm not just saying this. It is legitimately my favorite sportsbook to use. I use it all the time. I had a sizable preseason bet on one team, and that team did, in fact, win the Super Bowl. Got a nice bonus on that. The midway point of the NBA season's here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money line to point scorers and threes drained. Nuggets first quarter at full strength when they have all their guys back. That's a really nice spot. You guys should look at if you're going to bet on FanDuel and you're doing the same game parlays. If you like them, especially when they're at home, Nuggets first quarter, Nuggets full game is a really nice same game parlay you can put in and kind of combo it. And that's an opportunity there. FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at bigger payout with those same game parlays. My Arkansas came out there, payout. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Tuesday. Adam, one of the big takeaways I had last night, I wrote it down in my notes, was this lineup that's like Ish, Jeff, Christian, Thomas Bryant. And I was just like, so many of these guys were just not in the rotation at all to start the year. Like, this is a whole other unit that is out there, and it's going to change even more with the addition of Reggie Jackson. And so like, it's just really striking to me how different they are. I'll also say that Christian plays like a vet. Like, he plays like a vet. That's one of the things I think is earned in playing time. It's really strange to see a Nuggets unit that feels so experienced and so polished, even if they're not very good. Like, I look at that and I'm just like, oh, NBA guy, NBA. Like, those are all guys that I've seen play on other teams so many possessions. It's very interesting to see like such a seasoned bench unit, even if it's not going to have a very high ceiling.
But it needs an identity. And I think that's why this trade is so interesting is, to your point, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, Vlatko Cancar. I like all three of those players a lot. I think they're really good. But I don't think any of them are your identity. If they are, the identity is defense with no offense. And we've seen that a little bit. But that's why Thomas Bryant is so interesting to me. And like these pre-All-Star, like this game and then the next one at Dallas, I think Thomas Bryant just has to fit in. They're not going to be able to run a whole lot of stuff through him. It's just like whatever. I do wonder, though, coming out of the All-Star break, if you do, Reggie Jackson rumored to be joining Denver. I don't think it officially has happened yet. Hopefully it happens soon, but maybe it's not till after the All-Star break. But either way, I look at that and I go, if you're running out a 5-person bench lineup, is option 1 and 2 in some order Thomas Bryant and Reggie Jackson?
Yes.
And that's like, so you have a new identity. those other players now get to be defensive stoppers and connective guys around those other two. And maybe that's a good identity. I'm optimistic. I'm a little worried about the Reggie Jackson part. Like, I'm hot or cold on him. I'm excited, but he's volatile. But Thomas Bryant, I just think, is a really good addition. And I think before long, like watching him last night, you knew it was too early for them to do this, but I kept thinking he's the best option. They keep running these Jeff Green ISOs and putting, Thomas Bryant out of the play. He's got to fill in. I kept thinking it'd probably be better to run pick and roll for him and try to get him the ball in the roll.
This should not be difficult. Like, you brought in you basically brought in a bunch of veterans and are just like, we just got to get through these minutes. We just got to get through these minutes.
Yep.
What's the easiest thing to do in the NBA? What can all these guys run? Pick and roll. Yeah. I mean, this is what drove me nuts about the second unit last year and to start this year. It's just like, you just need to be able to run basic pick and roll. Like, right. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's like really predictable. Yes, 100%. But like, your efficiency doesn't need to be crazy. You're just treading water. The entire objective is to tread water until the most impactful player in basketball comes back on the floor.
But by the way, we're being hard on them. But last night they won the game because of that first quarter or second quarter run that the bench did. Like,
yep.
It's funny how much we always talk about when the Nuggets starters get a big lead and the bench blows it. When the starters come back in, they often like struggle. They don't have, for some reason, it's like starting over. They don't carry momentum or anything.
Right.
The opposite is true. Last night, the starters were bad. The bench came in and played great. And when the starters came back in, it's like they carried the momentum of the bench, meaning they started to play well immediately on their second stint. So last night, that was really big for them, and they got it. And I think the biggest thing, I've been putting the stat out. Jokic was only a +5, which is only, I think, the fourth time. This is a crazy one, Matt. I think it's only the fourth time the Nuggets have won this season when Jokic has been a +7 or less.
Jesus.
But that goes to show you like how like low the bar is for that bench. Just don't be a disaster. And on nights like tonight, they were actually a slight positive.
What do you think about Tom? We'll talk about Reggie next. What do you think about Thomas Bryant? I wanted to know your first impressions of it.
I will give it to you in just 1 second. I just want to clarify here because I don't want personality. I don't know anything about his personality. People with the Clippers that I've talked to have said like, "Oh, you're going to love his personality. He's been great. Teammates love him. All this stuff." So I don't think it's that, but I can't speak to it. I just mean his decision making. Reggie is Will Barton-esque in his like he can do a lot of things, but often he is focused on attack. So that's what I mean about volatile is sometimes when you're in aggressive mode all the time, it really pays off and everybody eats off it. But when you're off or when that decision-making is wrong, it looks really bad. That's all I mean.
So what are your impressions of Thomas Bryant? First impressions?
I mean, I really like Thomas Bryant. I think he's a great backup center. I think he'll be one of the better ones. He has a great what I said when the trade happened, over the weekend was that he has incredible touch and just a knack for scoring. Like, Michael Porter has this where it doesn't always look pretty or whatever, but he just puts the ball in the basket. It's just like he knows what to do. Thomas Bryant has some of that as well, where you're like, oh, that was an awkward angle or whatever, but he just knows how to put the ball in the basket. So I was impressed with him. Defensively, he's exactly what I expected, which is to say Denver is going to be giving up some defensive impact and versatility by playing him at center instead of that Zeke Naji Vlatko Cancar combo. They're going to give up some defensive versatility and I think even aptitude, but I think they're going to more than make up for it on the offensive end because he's really is a good bucket getter.
And I will say, like, if Tom Bryant isn't important to this team from the perspective of like, if it's a game situation where you're like, we need to get stops and we're not like, you're getting cooked.
Yeah.
Malone should feel empowered to go to Zeke at 5 when Zeke comes back. Right. Like, you just should be able to go to that. Reggie Jackson. So I was, I'd forgotten about all the local connections for Reggie, which was my bad when I was kind of analyzing the decision making. I kind of figured that Reggie's like very well liked by people around. Like, he was buzzed with PG, and that's why he went to the Clippers. He's very well liked by some and very disliked by others, depending on who you talk to. And so like those relationships kind of impact things. But I think it's cool that he chose Denver. I think it's cool that Denver got a buyout guy. I think,
yeah, especially one that a lot of teams wanted. I mean. The Phoenix fans were like irate that he chose Denver over Phoenix. They were like indignant how could he choose them? We got KD. Why would he not want to come to so just kind of shows you he was coveted.
I think it's interesting that if you look at his 3-point career, right? He was terrible early. He got much better. He stabilized about 35%. He was at 37% in Detroit. The Clippers get him in 2020, and he goes 41%, 43%. Then Kawhi's out the entire year last year. He goes to 33%, and he started off this year at 35% with a more. So I think a lot of this is, as we've seen with other guys, the level of talent is going to dictate how well Reggie Jackson shoots. Now, the second unit doesn't have a lot of talent, and so that might be a little tough. The minutes where Jackson's on the floor with Joker, probably going to be pretty good. Like Reggie playing off Joker is probably going to be pretty good because everybody shoots better when Nicola's on the floor. He just helps you get quality in rhythm looks. But as far as a second unit stabilizer, I think he'll be fine, but I don't think it's going to be like sensational 6-man stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. And I'm excited for him to stagger minutes. I mean, one of the big challenges for Michael Malone, again, after the All-Star break when Jamal, by the way, Dennis Scott on the NBA TV broadcast, I got to clarify something. He said yesterday that he talked to Jamal pregame and he said like, hey, when are you going to be back? And he said, oh, I will reevaluate after the All-Star break. And people freaked out because of that word reevaluate. When it's coming from a team, it's different than like coming from Dennis Scott, who just talked to Jamal Murray. People were freaking out about, I don't like that. What does that mean? Is he going to be out for longer? Maybe. I don't have anything to report there. I'm just telling you that from Dennis Scott's report, he was just saying he's not playing till after the All-Star break, which is what I expect. I didn't expect him to play tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if if he takes another 2 weeks. A lot of this guys is like the Nuggets get to, here's the thing. We don't have any reason to believe. Okay. We don't have any reason to believe that there's a serious problem. We wouldn't know if there was a serious problem because of how the Nuggets training staff operates, but we also don't have any sort of like, there's nothing. I don't have any red flags for you.
Well, the other thing is Jamal Murray went through a workout before the game. So I mean,
it's fine. They can afford to do this.
Right.
Look at where they're at in the standings. Look at how Memphis is floundering. They can afford to do this.
I actually sneaky think it's kind of nice right now, especially if they can get this win over Dallas would be nice to have. I mean, just because every home win at the moment feels big, but who knows? Like whatever. But if they do get it, it would be so nice that AG and Jamal Murray would essentially get 2.5 weeks off in the middle of the season. That's huge. Yeah. That's really big.
Somebody was worried about it. I'm trying to find the quote. They were worried about him not signing because Casey Mack says, when can Reggie sign? I'm just nervous because Terrence Ross changed his mind. I'll give you some context. Terrence Ross was going to sign with the Mavericks. And then the Mavericks could only offer the minimum because they used their entire mid-level exception on JaVale McGee, who you might remember everyone's really mad at the Nuggets not playing. By the way, JaVale played 1 minute and 15 seconds last night.
I'm going to start bringing up all of your bad takes over and over and over again for years to come. Matt did not like Jokic until like 2019.
I didn't.
He thought he was bad.
Everybody else was mad about it. I have so many horrible takes.
It wasn't until he was an MVP basically that Matt's like, you know what, he might be good.
Yeah. Then I was like, okay, all right, no, he's decent. I just think that JaVale. Honestly, this is less of a Nuggets fans thing. It's more of a just like I have always been against JaVale. Like since Washington, I've been like, this is not a winning player. But the Suns had the full mid-level exception, so they used a chunk of that on Terrence Ross. So Terrence Ross got more money. That's not the case with now. They've used a huge chunk of that on Terrence Ross, so there's not as much money. I don't have any reason to think that Reggie's going to change his mind. I think you can be cool on that. And
somebody asked earlier in the chat, was this agreed upon beforehand? Again, can't agree upon anything, and players sometimes do give a person like, oh yeah, I like that, and then change their mind. So I don't want to make it sound like this was inevitable, but I first heard about this deal I believe on the trade deadline day. So from talking to people, they had a good sense that all the moving parts, it was going to be getting back Thomas Bryant and Reggie Jackson as a net. However you want to shake that out, they felt like we're going to lose Bones and Davon and a second-round pick, and we're going to gain Thomas Bryant and Reggie Jackson. So at least that's how they spoke about it even before the news broke.
As we go to break, the Nuggets are 40-18. They got to 40 wins before 20 losses, the old Phil Jackson motto that you need to do. Only the Celtics and the Nuggets have accomplished that. They are 4 full games up for the number 1 seed. They have a top 1 offense. So why are there not more Nuggets at the All-Star game? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk about Bones Highland and how youth empowers our mouths. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the absolute best tool for you to find the right people for your company. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond the resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Now I'm going to make a list of like all the terrible Nuggets takes I've had through the years. I'm like trying to go through them. Like thought Emmanuel Mudiay was going to be amazing. I'm trying to think of like what were the other there's just been so many.
I don't know.
Joker being the biggest one. I was like, I don't know. I mean, sure, you can't do this in the playoffs.
We were joking about this the other day, but the Bones Burger, you know, the fish burger, we have to rename it. Somebody who said the boneless fish burger. And then somebody said the Ish Fish Burger, the Ish Smith Fish Burger,
the Ish Fish Burger. So first, let's talk about All-Star. 3-point contest come out today. The Nuggets are the #1 3-point shooting team in the league. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's at 40%. He's been amazing, and he's not invited to the All-Star 3-point contest. Aaron's not in the dunk contest. Said he wouldn't do it unless he was selected. He wanted to be a starter, actually, which was not going to happen. So look, I don't have. Maybe if I ask the guys on Wednesday, they'll be like, "Yeah, they asked," and I decided I would rather.
That'd be the funniest outcome, is if all of Nuggets Nation. I mean, first of all, Matt, in today's day and age, the internet age, there's few things that fans seem to like more than righteous indignation. Like, oh my God, we deserve this thing and we weren't given to it, no matter how superficial. So I have a sense that Nuggets fans just really, there's part of them that enjoy this. They're like, I knew it. They weren't going to give it. Denver's the #1 seed in the West. They only have one All-Star. They're the #1 shooting team in the NBA. Nobody makes it to the 3-point contest. So it gives you that sweet, sweet, righteous indignation. Yeah.
And like I made the comment on Twitter, and there was understandable pushback from Kings fans, and I totally get it. Like, I tend to be like, I don't, to be honest, I don't really have opinions on the All-Star game. I don't necessarily think that I buy into the idea that if you have the #1 seed and are the best team, that you have to have multiple.
I agree. Guys. Hey, I agree.
But
like, it's fun to play that card.
Yeah, it's fun to play it. If you are somebody that's like, well, they're the #1 team because it's like, now look, Jaylen Brown's like top 10 in scoring, so I get Jaylen Brown being an All-Star. I do. But like, this is kind of the question of do you think that the #1 team has to have more than one All-Star? I think it is annoying when it's like other teams have more than one All-Star and the Nuggets don't, because it's like, I mean, I would use Memphis in this situation where, look, Jaren missed a huge chunk of time. Jaren's the best defensive player in the league right now, but like, yeah, I don't know that I would say that like Jaren's been better because of the games that he's missed in terms of overall impact than Aaron. I don't know if I would get there. I actually think that Aaron Gordon should have gotten Jaren Jackson's spot. Which, as a Memphis
honestly, Matt, the word narrative gets thrown around a lot. It's neither good nor bad. It's like, how are those narratives crafted? And the Nuggets' narrative really is crafted that it's Jokic that does everything, which I think is true. He's the center of everything, more so than just about anybody outside of Luka. So he is the center of things. But that this team, that everybody else is kind of like this equal thing. And other teams are crafted more as duos or whatever. So I think some of this is just from like how the Nuggets are discussed. And then it frames the way you look at them. But I think also part of it is Jamal is their second best player, but Gordon was their second best player for the first 30 games of the year.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this is also everyone wanted Joker to get acknowledgement for how, well, this is the acknowledgement. It's like, yeah, the Nuggets are literally just Joker. Like that's like how people around the league view them is like, well, yeah, because Joker. Like Nikola Jokic is awesome. Like Michael Malone, Jamal.
Yeah, even Michael Malone gets nothing for it. Yep.
Yeah. Like there's no conversation about Michael Malone for Coach of the Year. Team's number 1 in the Western Conference. Had much injuries. Yeah. Bones Highlands. I will give you my bonus take. If you're on the show, you probably heard the comments on social media. If you haven't, his introductory press conference, he said there's 2 phenomenal players in LA, and there was 1 phenomenal player when he was asked about Jamal and Nikola. He said after he's like, y'all are reaching on social media. He said, it wasn't intending to be a slight against Jamal.
What's your take?
I go back and forth. The reason I go back and forth is one of the last games before Bones was removed from the rotation, he hit a big shot and Jamal came over and was like patting him on the back of the head and like had words for him. It was like really there for him. And I think these things are often, they're not super simple in terms of like, they don't like each other. They like each other.
This is the best take. Yep.
Their best friend. Like it's not binary. It's oftentimes like a combination of things because
everybody's frame of reference is their high school basketball team where like you're all best friends and stuff like this. And then like everything fits into that box, but this is the NBA. It's different.
It's teammate, it's not coworkers. It's not friends, you're teammates. And in the end, you're professional teammates. And that changes things.
Yep.
And so like these things are, and Bones has career objectives and Jamal has a career and all those things are I think a little complicated. They sent a private plane and this is how they treat you when they like you. I mean, from that perspective, he is going to love it because Steve Ballmer is going to pay the most no matter what for everything. And, that is like, that's an advantage that other teams are going to have, like point blank. I just don't know that it matters. Look, this is on Bones. Bones is going to have to earn minutes from Ty Lue. He's going to have to make good on them. And he's going to have to show that he is better at the things that he was not great at here. And my ultimate take on this, Adam, is literally just like young dudes are going to be young dudes. I'm not surprised. He's going to look back on this and be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like when he's 28, he'll be like, yeah, it wasn't great.
We saw this a little bit last year. I mean, there was some stuff behind the scenes between him and Boogie. And if you remember over the summer, he put out an Instagram and he even kind of admitted as much publicly without anybody really knowing the story. He had a post where he said something like, yo, Boogie, I now appreciate all the things you did for me. I didn't realize it at the time or something, this or that. I think Bones is like that. I will say, I think the story's a little boring about the like, is he or isn't he calling guy out or this or that? Like, look, every player on earth wants to prove their team wrong when a team gave up on him. So of course he's going to have some grudge against him. And I think the aspect of like, is it personal in this way or that way is like a little bit, whatever. I mean, he said what he said. I don't think it was a mistake, but I also don't think it was like, I don't think he meant for it to be the thing that it became.
Yeah, it got interpreted because people were looking for slights.
Yeah.
Like everyone, and not just Nuggets fans, like social media, like everyone's looking for beef. That's what drives content in the NBA in the regular season instead of, the games. I think he did say this. Joshua brings this up. He says he's a better point guard if he gets the chance to play. He did talk a lot about like, well, I think I'm a point guard, and like and I'm just like, you literally had like they gave you the backup point guard spot and gave you the ball.
All of this. Here's what I'll say about all this, Matt, because I'm with you on this. Like, there's that quote in particular was like, come on, man. Like, you literally there's nobody else that you were in that spot. But the one thing I will say is I think Bones is a better point guard than what he showed in Denver. I'm not trying to say whose fault it was. I imagine it was mostly Bones' fault, like the way that he played or this or that. But I would not be surprised if he goes to another circumstance and actually plays like a better point guard. I think he's capable of playing like a better point guard than what he played in Denver.
I 100% agree with this. Look, he's going to have Mason Plumlee as backup center. It's going to be that's a good pick and roll point guard to work with. He's faster and more mobile than DeAndre now. He's going to have shooters. They are loaded with shooters. All of the spacing stuff that we talked about early in the season, not a problem with the Clippers. That team has nothing but shooters. And so like, he's going to have an opportunity to work there. The defensive stuff is going to be tough. They don't have a lot of weak spots defensively on that team. And they've designed the team purposely that way. The bar's high. The bar is high defensively there. So we'll see if teams continue to pick on him the way they did in Denver, we'll see what kind of happens there. I'll just tell you that, like, there have been guys who have come through Denver that have left, and I've had a bad taste in my mouth for the experience of covering them. I don't have that with Bones. Like, he's a young kid that believes in himself, that clash with teammates, front office, coaching. You can blame whoever you want, and it's probably a mix of all three. But he's got to make it through the NBA with whatever approach is best for him. Making in the NBA, you got to be yourself, whether that means being a role player that dedicates yourself and stays quiet and does the work, or you are a mouthy guy that constantly goes at everybody and is like this combination of joy and shoving it in people's faces. Like, Bones in some ways is kind of the offensive version of Patrick Beverley. Like, there's a little bit of a correspondence there. Beverley was in Russia and had to work his way out of it. And like, that's why he brings like that dog mentality to everything. He's also very uneven. Bones is going to have to bring the same kind of mentality of proving everyone wrong. That's the only way he's going to make it in the league. And whatever he needs to do to get the money and take care of his family and have a successful career, that's what he needs to do.
Yep. I mean, it's weird because I like Bones. Obviously people have gotten to know him, personally, through some of the stuff we did with him at DNVR. So it's hard for me just to totally like turn on him and say like, oh, I'm rooting for him to fail. I'm rooting for the Clippers to fail. But I like Bones, and he's a talent. And when he's on, he's fun. And so I root for him to figure it out.
All right, let's get wrap it up for the show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll get you caught up on everything that's going on in the NBA, as well as we'll talk a little bit about the game versus the Dallas Mavericks, which should be fascinating. Caught their game last night. They're 0-2 with Luka and Kyrie. So an interesting game coming up on Wednesday. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll get you set for All-Star Weekend, all that more throughout the week. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great week. We appreciate you guys being part of the community. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. We'll talk to you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.